Ladies and gentlemen, on today's program, I'm going to announce my decision about running for president. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
I have made a decision regarding running for president, and it will affect this television program. But first, is this the face of a president? Is this, well, here, go to this camera. Is this presidential material for a face? My eye is red today because I scratched my lens. It's killing me. So it's a bizarre day for me to make this decision. And for those of you who are not familiar with my past in politics, I ran for president against Obama in 2012 in a few states in the primary, just to be a fly in the ointment. And I actually beat him in 14 counties in Oklahoma. All right? So for those who think that I'm not able to run a campaign or that I don't have a message that's worth hearing, remember that. I beat a sitting president. The entire panhandle of Oklahoma voted for me for president over Obama in the 2012 Democrat primary. So, because I did well in 2012, I've been pondering running again, either as a Democrat or Republican, and I've made up my mind. I will not run. I regret those of you who want me to run. I would like to, but I can't because my wife won't let me. She doesn't want me to run. We have a child who's sick, and I would have to give up the TV show. That's why I said it will affect the TV show. And I don't want to give up this show for the little good that it does, or maybe the big good that it does with a few people. I will continue to broadcast. I'll continue to look at the other candidates, continue to discuss Iran, Donald Trump, all of what's going on in the news from a distinctly Christian perspective, without apology, without compromise, and seeking no quarter from my enemies, from our enemies. All right, was that fun? Did I do that okay? I didn't want to be too cheeky. You know, everyone's running for president nowadays. Let's look at the list right now, and I'm going to tell you who I think is good and not good, because since I'm not running, I might as well determine some of the good guys, the bad guys. All right, let's go. I'm going to skip some people because there's, I don't know, there's like 20-something people who've announced. Some of them I've never heard of. And, you know, like 2000 declared presidential candidate, I'm not making this up. His name is Michael Bickelmeyer. And when it says what you do for a living or who you are, like former governor or a current senator or whatever, his line is creative dreamer. I'm just not going to put his face up, all right? Look at Michael Bickelmeyer. Michael, this is your claim to fame. You are a creative dreamer, and I respect that. I just don't know that I would put that as what qualifies me to be president. What if he's an uncreative dreamer? What if his dreams are boring? All right, anyway, let's look. Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is not a good man, all right? Jeb Bush let Terry Schiavo die. Let her be starved to death in broad daylight. Jeb Bush, his response to the Supreme Court in the Obergefell decision, the homosexual marriage decision, was pathetic, okay? His reaction and his response to illegal immigration is pathetic. And another reason that I loathe him as a candidate, you ready for this? It's because the establishment loves him and because the media loves him. The New York Times wants him to be the candidate. Any Republican candidate that the New York Times would like to be a candidate for president, no, not our friend. Remember that, friends. All right, Dr. Ben Carson. He, by the way, Alan Keyes, thank you, Dr. Keyes. Alan Keyes squared me away that Dr. Carson is not a true pro-lifer. Let me just say it, and then I'll move on. Dr. Keyes is not running for president. I'm sorry, Dr. Carson is not running for president. He's running for Surgeon General. Mark my words. If a Republican gets the election. All right, let's go on to Chris Christie. Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey. Don't like him, don't trust him. He's establishment. He is flip-flops all over the place with the killing of babies and with the dignity of marriage, the sacrament of marriage. Don't trust him. Don't like him. Ted Cruz. Oh, now you're going somewhere. Ted Cruz has resisted the establishment in D.C. By the way, are you keeping the clock today? Are you going to tell me when it's time for it? All right. We're doing this live, by the way. This is live to tape. There's no editing going on here. So Ted Cruz, you know what? I'm going to tell you why I like Ted Cruz. Ready? He's got the right enemies. Ted Cruz has the right enemies. And who do they include? The Republican establishment. The leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the House, John Boehner. They don't like him because he won't bow down to them. He won't toe the line. He resists. He speaks what he believes. Now, I'm going to tell you the problem with Ted Cruz. Ready? It's a big one. He's talking about changing the Constitution so that he can have Supreme Court judges not have a lifetime appointment, maybe even elect them. But Senator Cruz, you've got a constitutional way to get these judges out of office right now. It's called impeachment, Mr. Senator. Impeach them. Bring articles of impeachment to the Senate floor, Ted Cruz. Come on. You know it's the right thing to do.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah?
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to apologize for some of my improper comments in the earlier segment and going over in time. Billy Bob, our guy who keeps the clock and whispers in my ear when time is about to come up, he's talking away in there and his unit's not on. That's why I looked and said, are you ever going to count me down here? Oh, you mean I need to turn this little switch on? Live to tape. That's what this show is. All right. It's always for momentum. You never talk about what happened to Glitch, but I thought it would be funny because Billy Bob said to. All right, let's go on. Ted Cruz, please impeach the judges. Then I'll know that you're for real. But I like him. Let's see, skimming over people. Carly Fiorina. She's a businesswoman, worked for Hewlett-Packard, was a big shot at Hewlett-Packard. Only well-known woman to be running. She says she's pro-life. I don't know much about her, to be honest with you. But she's got a little bit of traction. Well, I'm reserving judgment on her. Lindsey Graham, current senator from South Carolina, no need to reserve judgment on him. Lindsey Graham is the stuff that traitors are made of. Lindsey Graham is the stuff that a Judas is made of. So, if treachery, if Benedict Arnold, if Judas Iscariot himself, if they're your kind of candidate, you want this man, Lindsey Graham. Treachery with a smile. Treachery with a whimsical look. Treachery and betrayal with a nice suit and a fairly decent hairdo. Not to be trusted. He's why we have Kagan on the Supreme Court and why we have Sotomayor on the Supreme Court. He's a treacherous, wicked man. Hey, can you find that? See if you can run that. If it's running now, you'll know. We flogged him in effigy. Hopefully you can find this video, but we actually did a tour and went through South Carolina. This had him in effigy, flogging him. He's that bad. He really is. One of the news stories said, finally, somebody hangs Lindsey Graham in effigy. Oh, those were the days. Mike Huckabee. not getting good traction. He did so well when he ran 8 years ago, not getting good traction this time at all. And I don't know. As a former governor of Arkansas, I kind of like him. I do kind of like him. I just don't think that I don't think he's got the chutzpah to really make it a crime to kill babies and to restore the definition of marriage and to deal with this out of control Supreme Court. I don't know if he's got what it takes. And he doesn't have the right enemies. That makes me concerned. Bobby Jindal, he's the current governor of Louisiana. My wife likes him. He is very articulate, says he's pro-life, says marriage is between a man and a woman. He's a little young, and that boyish face, I don't know. I think that people want, I could be totally wrong. The boyish face throws me. It might throw others too. John Kasich, governor of Ohio, don't trust him. Absolutely do not trust him, and he's a socialist. He is a socialist. Don't trust him, people. Do not trust him. Oh, George Pataki, former governor of New York. This man is probably, if I was going to believe in same-sex marriage, which I'm not, okay? But if I was, and I'm not, George Pataki and Lindsey Graham, they deserve each other because they're both so treacherous. George Pataki is a Catholic who believes in baby killing. George Pataki, I spoke to Governor Pataki when he was governor. I was running for Congress in New York. We were at a banquet, a fundraising banquet together, and I said, Governor Pataki, please just stay out of this race. Just don't endorse my opponent. I said, I know you're not going to endorse me, but just please don't endorse my opponent, Bud Walker. And of course, Pataki did. Gave him the pictures, the photo op, the whole 9 yards. Don't like him, don't trust him. He doesn't have a shot. He doesn't have a chance in the hot place to be the president of the United States because he's a left-wing lunatic who just happens to be a Republican. However, he is running for a place on the cabinet. I promise you that. George Pataki is running for something, maybe Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of the Interior. He's running to be in the president's staff. Rand Paul. Rand Paul broke my heart. I was kind of enthused about him for a while. Not anymore, because he said that marriage is a contract. He said, well, I disagree with the Supreme Court's decision on marriage. Maybe government should just get out of the marriage business altogether, because anyone has the right to have a contract. Senator Paul, I regret to inform you that you really blew it on this one. And it's more than a contract, sir. It's a covenant established by Almighty God. It is a sacrament, elevated to a sacrament by our Lord Jesus Christ. It's not merely a contract. And adultery in the Old Testament was a criminal act, okay? So we see that God, from the Old Testament, we see that God wants marriage to be a part of the civil law code. So yes, it does have legal aspects. Yes, the government is in the marriage business at one level or another. We can talk about that another day. But Rand Paul broke my heart. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have to be theocentric. You have to be God-centered in your understanding, sir, not libertarian-centered. I'll be right back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Billy Bob asked me when we were off the air, he said, what is a libertarian? Define it a little bit better. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it on this show, but in a nutshell, a true libertarian says, look, do what you want. As long as you're not hurting someone else, do what you want. Drugs should be legal. They should not be illegal. Prostitution should not be illegal. Anything sexual should not be illegal. Do what you want, as long as you're not hurting someone else. A theocentric libertarian would be a good definition for somebody who upholds the law of God, because libertarians don't believe in the welfare state, for example. But neither does the Old Testament teach that we should have a welfare state. The Old Testament, and the New Testament for that matter, shows that the purpose of civil government is not to be the daddy and the healer and the mommy and the instructor. It's to suppress evil deeds by fear of punishment. That's the purpose of government. Armies, roads, and to suppress evil deeds by punishing evildoers. That's it. It's very limited. And that's what our government started as, very limited government. But it's still theocentric. So you can't have prostitution, all right? You just can't. And marriage is defined by God, not by the state, not by libertarians. So let's keep going. Rick Perry, he's running, former governor of Texas. I actually like him. I really do. And I think that he'd probably make a good president. He says he's pro-life. He has done things when he was governor. He helped to choke out a lot of these freestanding abortion mills. He refused to back down. And the establishment doesn't like him. And he's currently indicted for keeping his word that he was going to not fund a certain county if a prosecutor was still there. The details are eluding me. My teleprompter broke. But anyway, Rick Perry is still in, former governor of Texas. Marco Rubio. I don't know. I don't like his voice. He sounds like a kid. You know what I mean? When they're running ads, somebody is running ads using his voice right now to stand up to the Iranians. And when the voice on the air says, Marco Rubio is standing up to the Iranians, and then it sounds like a teenage boy comes on. We need to not give the Iranians this deal. It's just so uninspiring. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I kind of like him. I'm not sure if he's really, let me just say this. Here's your litmus test, all right? Will a candidate say, I will have a litmus test. No judge will sit on the Supreme Court who will sustain Roe versus Wade. That's it. Will you overturn Roe, and will you overturn Obergefell? That's it. And if he'll say it publicly, then he's got the spine. And then he'll have the right enemies. Ooh. A man is known by the enemies he keeps. Rick Santorum. I like him. He tries a little too hard to equivocate. He tries a little too hard to be too nice. He's passionate. He's a true believer. He's a good man. I think he'd make a good president. Let's look at the last two. Scott Walker. From what I know about him, I like him. He says he's pro-life. He stood up to the unions. He stood up to the establishment. Are we in the third or fourth segment? Okay. He seems to be a good guy, and his wife wants there to be same-sex marriage, and he doesn't. He said we need a constitutional amendment to have marriage between a man and a woman. So at least he's saying that. I wish he'd say that we should impeach these judges. Most of the establishment are saying they don't have the constitutional authority to do this. Well, then impeach them. I mean, do your job. Have some guts. Would you have some backbone? Get rid of them. Bring in articles of impeachment. Because right now you're bowing your knees to them like they're a bunch of gods up there, like they're oligarchy. Finally, last but not least, my personal favorite flavor of the day. I'm going to tell you after this break. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. All right, drum roll, please. My personal favorite of the week, presidential candidate. And I have to just say this. I'll put a shout out to Dr. Alan Keyes, Ambassador Alan Keyes, one of the greatest men that I know. I have only a handful of living heroes. Most of my heroes are dead. He is a living hero. And once in a while, I have the privilege of him watching my TV show. And Dr. Keyes, don't correct me too harshly, all right? He's doing research on these guys, I promise you. All right, so here's my favorite of the week. You ready? Yes, put his picture up. Do it. The do, man. The hairdo. Look at him. This man, Donald Trump. He's my favorite of the week. All right, I'm going to explain why. He says, by the way, that he's pro-life. He had a conversion. He says that he is for one marriage between one man and one woman. He got in a spitting match on CNN over it recently. Held his ground, which I respect. But here's why I like him so much. You ready? Because John McCain doesn't like him. Because Jeb Bush doesn't like him. Because the Republican establishment doesn't like him. And because he's mixing it up. And this is what's crazy. Please hear me. He's ahead in the polls right now. Donald Trump is leading. He's at 15%. Now, remember, there's about 127 candidates running for president right now. So he's got 15%. He's ahead of Jeb Bush, I think, by 4 points. But this is even crazier. He's the number 2 pick. Because they asked in one of the polls, they said, all right, who's your number 1 guy? And they give an answer. He gets 15%. But when you say who's your number 2, he jumps to 25%. He broadens his lead. So you've got the head of the GOP, the party apparatus, not a political official, but the head of the GOP called him and said, look, congratulations, you're leading the polls. Could you tone down the immigration rhetoric about Mexican government sending us murderers and rapists? Could you just tone that down a little bit? Because we really want minorities. We're starting to make inroads into some minority groups. And could you tone it down? And Trump said, no, I won't. But thanks for asking. Nope, not going to do it. Going to keep saying what I want. I love that. I love that. Now, Scott Walker has that too. Just Donald Trump has it with panache. Panache. I beg your pardon. Just say the word properly. He's got panache and he's got the hairdo and he's a billionaire. So Jeb Bush raising $100 million, it just doesn't matter. And Donald Trump is ahead in the polls right now, not from PACs. He's ahead in the polls from earned media. And I'm going to tell you why else he's ahead in the polls. You ready? Because people have had it. People are fed up. They are desperate for somebody to just poke people in the eye, to poke a news journalist in the eye, to tell the establishment, ugh. That's one of the reasons Ted Cruz is doing so well. He's ignoring the establishment, and he's bashing the establishment when he wants to, and he's hostile to the press because the press are hostile to him, and he's doing well in the polls. So anyway, my favorite this week is Donald Trump, just because he's got the right people that don't like him. I am so disgusted with the Republican establishment. I think that they are a greater threat to American liberty than the Democrats. And the reason is because the Democrats are clearly hostile to us. But the Republicans say that they're opposing the Democrat agenda. But they're not. They're rolling over. They're opening the gates to the citadels. They're letting them run in and run over us roughshod. So I despise the Republican establishment, and I think that they're like a Benedict Arnold. Remember, Benedict Arnold was a traitor because he was found with plans to turn over West Point to the British. That is Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, and the Republican establishment, and Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush. And I'm just going to keep saying names until I run out of time. you.